listening session on housing. My name is Nate Small, and I'm the chair of the Yarmouth Community Housing Committee. The members of our committee are DJ Sullivan, Richard Carroll, Lorraine Doyle, Susan Christensen, Lee Hamilton, and Tom Barron. We also have Mary Wagon with us tonight. She is our town affordable housing administrator, and we are happy you could all join us. And I will throw one other thing that's not on my list here. Thank you for Mary. She is definitely our boss. Any questions, I'm more than happy to try to answer them for you. But after tonight, if you ever have any questions, Mary is definitely the one you want to reach out to. And her information's on the table, on the website, and all of that good stuff. So feel free to do that. Safe and decent housing is a high priority for the town of Yarmouth. And we are working proactively to create a diversity of housing with a strong emphasis on affordable housing. Now that we have a brand new complex being built on Route 28 and we are at a halfway mark to our 10% goal, we thought it was a good time to survey the town about our programs. Tonight we'll have a short presentation followed by an open comment period and then a survey. Let's start with the presentation, and I'm pleased to introduce Richard Carroll.
So the presentation is being shown on the screen on that side of the room, so if you want to focus on that. So the goal of tonight's meeting is to hear your thoughts and ideas about housing in Yarmouth. So the question is, should we expand our current affordable housing efforts and programs? What new directions might we go in? Should the town start offering new housing services in addition to what we're already doing? Or stay with creating more brick and mortar units? Or a mix of both? So we want to hear your preferences and your ideas. So currently 5% of Yarmouth's year-round housing stock is affordable and counts towards the state's goal of having 10% affordable housing. So as you can see from the slide, Yarmouth is right in the middle of the Cape Towns with respect to the percentage of affordable housing. So if you want to take a moment just to look at those percentages. And we're doing okay, but we're right in the middle.
I have a question. What do you consider affordable housing?
Mary will address that.
Would you like me to address that now?
I'd like to know what a baseline
Okay.
is.
So the federal government feels that if you're only spending 30% of your income, then you're okay with housing. If you go over 30% of your income on housing costs, you have a housing cost burden. If you go over 50% of your income is spent on housing, then you have an extreme
Housing burden.
you have an extreme housing burden. So that's basically we're trying to make sure that people, especially people on the lower spectrum of income, are only spending 30%.
But when
Now,
you say lower spectrum, what is the spectrum?
so for a household of one, that's $48,000 or less. So and then your affordable home would be about $150,000, and your affordable rental would be about $930 a month or something like that. To get on this list, which is the state's Chapter 40B subsidized housing inventory list, the unit has to serve a low moderate income household. The rent or the sale price has to be lower than the market rate, so it's affordable to that household. Has to be deed restricted in perpetuity. It also has to go through a lottery process. So we know there are more units in Yarmouth that serve low moderate income households, but these are the ones that the state has accepted on the list. And this is that 10% goal that you hear about. So we have units that aren't on the list, but we're proud to have 598 on the list, which gets us to 5%.
Okay.
So, okay.
So I really don't mean to correct you, but it's 596 is what the slide shows.
I'm always optimistic,
Close.
right?
Well, maybe there were two created today. But so of the 596 units, 459 are rentals, 137 home ownership. So in order to reach the 10% goal, we need to create 608 more. So it'll take a while. Yarmouth has been very proactive, and I think you can be proud of the efforts in Yarmouth. So with 596 affordable units, rental housing has been our priority because that is the greatest need in the community all over the Cape. So 75% of the affordable units in Yarmouth are rentals. So we need 608 additional units to hit 10%, and our annual production goal is 60 units a year. All right, so why do we need affordable housing? Well, there's a whole bunch of reasons, but there are three that we think are most important. So affordable housing keeps families on the Cape. I mean, if someone's living in Yarmouth, they want to stay in Yarmouth, they grew up here. The idea is affordable housing will allow them to stay here. Affordable housing reduces the cost burden for seniors and disabled individuals, and it supports the local economy because it helps create a stable workforce. And if you're spending less on housing, that allows you to spend more money in local businesses. All right. So the average home cost in Yarmouth is $304,400. That's the median price, so that's right in the middle of the spectrum of housing. Average mortgage payment is $1,575, and then you add utility cost and real estate taxes to that. Average monthly rent is $1,205 plus utilities. So these are the median housing costs in Yarmouth, and these high costs keep families and individuals from buying homes or finding a decent place to live. So we know there's a need for housing affordability, and how do we meet this need? What are the next steps? Mary Wagon will now go over some of the ways we can meet the need in more detail.
Okay, so as you know, we're also launching our survey tonight. There's paper surveys here, and there's also slips of paper with the web address that you can go to take it online. It's via SurveyMonkey. The Cape Cod Commission helped us with this with some money that they got from, I think it's the DTA. But so I'm going to start right in with what our survey is about. It's basically to get your feedback. We're halfway to our goal. We've got some nice units on Route 28 coming online. It's kind of a good time to kind of sit back and go, okay, do you want to see more of the same? You want to see some new stuff? We want to know about your preferences. And we're going to have a public comment period after I'm done. and that's going to help us set some goals and priorities. The survey is going to take about 20 minutes. It's 58 questions. They're basically the same questions over and over again about different types of programs that we have. And, you know, we want to thank you. It's important that we hear from you, and we want to thank you for your participation. So we've divvied up our housing program into three major categories. One is rental housing programs, which is basically brick and mortar, creating new units, new affordable units for our residents. The second one is, because there's such a huge need for rental units, is rental housing services. So this might be our rental assistance program, where income-eligible households are eligible for funds that will catch them up and back past due rent, or first and last month's rent for a new unit. It also could be roommate services. The Age Friendly team in Yarmouth wants to start to match intergenerationally people that have a lot of housing, maybe some empty bedrooms at home, with housemates. So that's like a service. The last big group we have is home ownership program. That's been our bread and butter. That's creating new homes with Habitat, Our First Home, the Buy Down program. So that's creating new affordable homes in town. So there are the examples of the rental housing program. So you had the John Simpkins School that was a reuse of the old high school. It was a reuse of municipal buildings. So we want to know if you like that idea, if this becomes another municipal building open, would you like the town to pursue it as some type of housing? The next one to the right is the motel redevelopment, where the classic example was the former Cavalier Motel, which was a problem property for the town, blighted. We wrote a motel bylaw that allowed that property to redevelop, and other Route 28 motels to redevelop as motels, as mixed use, which is, commercial and residential, or all residential. So that's the new building that you see on Route 28 being built. We also have the town-wide rental homes program, where we partner with nonprofits. We give them financial support to go out and buy existing duplexes and homes and then rent them out affordably in perpetuity. And then we have an accessory apartment program where homeowners that live here year-round, or this is their primary residence, can build an apartment in their home. There's an option for family-related, and then there's an option for affordable. So those are our rental home programs. The next one is the services. So one of them is, the Ready Renters List. So somebody might have a building that's converting to affordable units, but they don't know how to do the lottery and maintain the wait list. So the town helps them out with that. We run the lottery, we run the wait list. They pay us when they need a tenant. They give us a fee for that. It's kind of like a finder's fee. So that's like a service. We help them with technical advice with respect to the lottery. The next one I already mentioned is emergency rental assistance. That's for things like past due rent. If a Yarmouth resident is moving into another Yarmouth apartment, they might be eligible for first and last month's rent. And the next one is the sharing housing, which I talked about briefly before. It's that age-friendly Yarmouth team. They're trying to match people that are aging out in their homes, that have extra space in their homes, with housemates. And then again, home ownership program, that's at bread and butter. John Simpson School shouldn't be up there, sorry. That was meant to be a Habitat for Humanity site, sorry. But anyways, the town will partner with nonprofits like Habitat for Humanity to build new single-family dwelling units, new homes. The next picture is the buy-down program. That's very similar to that rental program. In this case, existing homes are purchased and bought down for an affordable buyer. And so our existing housing stock is converted to affordable home, and those are deed restricted in perpetuity. The next one, again, I didn't change the picture. It's supposed to be town-owned land. So once in a while, the town will go through the inventory of its land. Maybe it was land that was donated to the town for a certain purpose, or tax taking, or whatever. And we gift it to a nonprofit developer for the creation of typically affordable homes. And the last one is preservation. Now, preservation is something that's been growing. That program has been growing in town. That's if a deed restricted home, comes up for sale and needs a little help to sell. Sometimes we help with the advertising. Sometimes we help with the rehab. But we also have a program for low, moderate income homeowners in Yarmouth if they need emergency repairs to their home, like they have a leaky roof, broken window, a water heater that's broken. We can help them with emergency repairs. So I'm glad to leave that slide. So those are our existing. So, this is my big hope here with all of you, is possible new programs. I know everybody's thinking about housing all the time. I know you are. And how to solve our problem and get us to 60 new units a year, right? So, but there's lots of different types of housing. Some might go in the inventory, some might not. So some of the ideas that have been kicked around a little bit, because our goal is not so much the inventory, but safe and decent housing for all of us, right? So, congregate housing. That's where some part of the house is shared. People have private bedrooms, maybe a private bath, but they share the kitchen and they share the living space. Things that will help people age safely in place, aging in place. So that might be those emergency repair funds, if somebody is aging in place and their income is getting really tight and they have a leaky roof, how do we keep them safely in that home? Well, we might be able to do some repairs for their home. We also might be able to partner with the state and modify their home to be more accessible with ramps, bringing the washer and dryer up from the basement onto the main floor, or modifying the bathroom so people can safely age in place. Next one is assisted living. We have very few opportunities on the Cape for affordable assisted living, so it's something to think about. We're going to ask you, to rate that. Is that a priority? And then different designs for housing that might make a more efficient use of our space. So cottage communities. Cottage communities are where the parking is off to the side and people get to their homes through, a little bit of green space, maybe a pocket park, and pedestrian walkways. Rather than everybody driving right to their car, they actually walk to their car with porches that look at a common green space, so it's supposed to develop a better sense of a neighborhood. And then tiny homes, which are just small, cleverly designed homes. That would take a little bit of clever thinking because of our septic situation, but you could get little homes, like a cluster of little homes, rather than, one home on a big lot of land. My dream is the next one, rent to own. Help renters, that's usually you rent out a unit, part of their rent goes into a bank account, and then when they're ready, they purchase the home. So it's renting to own. Another one is the sharing housing, which we talked about a little bit before, where it's an intergenerational program where people who are aging out in their homes get a roommate. That helps with isolation and care of people and helps fill our housing crisis for younger people. There's also another idea we kind of kick around a little bit, and we kind of want to throw it out there, is seasonal housing for workers. What do we do, with that? They're only here temporarily, but they are important for our local economy, and we want to make sure that they're housed safely and decently while they're here. There is something going on in Harwich, and I have the newspaper article if anybody wants to look at it. They just got permitted by the Zoning Board of Appeals for quite a few number of bedrooms for seasonal workers. And then energy improvements, which be, lowering people's housing costs by making their homes more energy efficient. I know that was a lot. It's all in the paper survey, too. All the descriptions are in there. So these are the questions in the survey that you're going to see over and over again. Are you familiar with the program? Are you familiar with the Affordable Accessory Apartment Program? Yes, no? Does the program provide a valuable service? Do you support expanding the program? Does it have a benefit for our local economy? There's places all through the survey to write comments. And we're asking that the survey be returned to the Department of Community Development by December 31st. And there's little cards over here that gives you the website for the survey. It's on SurveyMonkey. So, and let's see what the next one is. Okay, so I'm done, and I was hoping the chair would now take public comments.
I would love to. So kind of what we're going to do here is please come up to the microphone, just state your name, just so we can keep a record of anything, and we would love questions, comments. I am going to start with Sandy, actually, who's here from HACK, HACK is, I think, a pretty new program, but starting a new program for year-round rentals, which is obviously a big problem here for a lot of folks that are looking for housing. So welcome, Sandy, and please let us know what you're trying to do.
Thank you. My name is Sandy Horvitz. I'm with Housing Assistance Corporation, HACK. We've been around for about 45 years. And one of the things that, housing. In fact, let's just say there's affordable housing with a big A, and then there's affordable housing with a little a. And so we need housing. The Cape, I don't think anyone, well, you may know it, but 82% of all the housing on the Cape is single-family houses. And so, therefore, there's not a lot of rental. In these single-family houses, majority I think it's like 60% of all housing, 40%. I knew the stats when I walked in. I can't remember now. A lot of them are seasonal rental that are only rented for summers, sometimes a week, sometimes 2 weeks, but they're not very well used. So what we've done is we've come up with a program where we're trying to induce owners of properties who are seasonal houses to rent 365, to become a full-time rental. We're offering a one-time bonus of $1,000 for anybody who chooses it. We also have a lawyer who will help the owner, help with the lease, help go through all of the laws in Massachusetts about tenant-owner relations, landlord-tenant relations. And so we think that we've put a little package together to help people. Also help in giving you best practices in how to find a tenant. So we think that it's a program that's going to add another layer. We can't build our way out of the housing crisis. According to the commission, we need 26,000 units in the next 10 years on the Cape. Does anybody know how to build 26,000 units? Anybody know where we're even going to find the land for 26,000 units? It's not going to happen. It's going to happen by doing a number of things. Mary mentioned one, accessory dwellings. This is another thing we think that's a tool in the toolbox. And so I'm going to leave some cards here. There's a website to go to if you're really interested. We've actually had almost 100 people call us to talk to us about it, and we've actually had a few people sign on. So I'm going to leave some cards here, and please, the information on who to contact is here. Any quick questions? Because I want you to get to this.
What was the name of the organization that you're with again?
I'm sorry?
What was the name of the organization you're with?
HAC, Housing Assistance Corporation. Anything else?
How do they get back to you, Sandy?
On here.
Okay.
Contact information is here. So please, pick them up on your way out. And thank you, and enjoy your survey.
Thank you, Sandy.
Thank you, Sandy. Anyone else? Don't be shy. Questions? Please.
Sure.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Matthew Tague. I live at 56 Main Street in Yarmouthport. I've lived in the town of Yarmouth since 1978. I'm a builder here on the Cape. I own Reef Realty in Dennis. My company has built over 1,500 units of housing on the Cape, and I was really thrilled to see this opportunity to talk about housing because I've worked not only in the commercial custom home building division, but I've spent many, many years working in through the subsidized and affordable housing programs. I did actually a few projects with Bob Murray, who many of you will remember, the Housing with Love Walk, and Bob was a great guy and had a great vision for the Cape in terms of really trying to address this housing issue even 20, 30 years ago. I also recently served with the Cape Cod Commission on their the study they did last year on their housing needs analysis, and I was also a member and chairman of the Barnstable Planning Board for 5 years. So very well versed in this process. I live it every day, and wanted to talk to you about some of the real striking factors that are causing this issue today. Number one, if you guys, and I think the gentleman before me just noticed it, we're well in excess of 20,000 units short of housing based on the current projections. The Cape Cod Commission study was very interesting. They spent probably several $1,000s bringing in some very capable consulting firms, and after several months of study and discussion, they said, you guys are the recipients of your own poor planning. Single lot zoning, the wastewater issue, which has never ever been addressed properly across the Cape, and then when you combine that with the fact that the building code changes in the state of Massachusetts since 2010 have raised the cost of construction probably 2 or 3-fold since that time. The National Association of Home Builders puts out a statistic, put it out again last year, $83,000 of the cost of the average home in the United States is due to regulatory compliance. So how do we solve this problem? One is, people want to talk about affordable or not affordable housing. I'm going to talk about housing. It's a simple market supply and demand issue. And without addressing the supply component, which is very difficult to do under the regulatory environment today, there will be no changes to this issue. you have to look at it from a holistic approach, not only through aggressive zoning in aggressive zoning changes, but how do you incentivize people like me, the average homeowner here, to create more housing units? You allow it to happen in a controlled, in logical fashion. The accessory dwelling unit, apartment unit process is kind of near and dear to my heart. It's actually why, when I lived in Barnstable for a few years, why I got on the Barnstable Planning Board. And I will tell you, in all honesty, it was shot down because the town of Barnstable was afraid they would lose their subsidies. Okay, it was going to compete for subsidized units, and it's really unfortunate because all the other components that are there to support an accessory dwelling unit on a property are very easily manageable. The zoning bylaws are very simple. Everybody wants to talk about the wastewater issue. I will tell you, in all honesty, the wastewater issue is completely solvable. It's a science problem. It's a chemistry problem. And the reason we don't have better science is because the barrier to entry to get in approved by Title V is so arduous and so lengthy that all this great technology that's in the marketplace is still metered out in drips and drabs to the state and the local regulatory agencies, where you can't go out and incentivize somebody to say, hey, listen, I'm going to create an affordable apartment and I'm going to put a denitrifying system on my property. Give me a permit for free. Why do I have to go spend $1,200, $1,500 to go stand in front of the Board of Health and tell me I'm doing the right thing? Incentivize the process and incentivize the development in a smart and logical manner. Specifically with the accessory dwelling unit component, which I think is probably the most reasonable and least expensive way for a town to address this issue, is that process has to be generally done either by rights or a special permit. We do have a lot of smaller lots and odd shaped properties and older properties on the Cape, but it also has to be flexible where the homeowner can live not just in the larger side of the house and just rent out the room over the garage or the little cottage they have in the backyard. Reverse those tables. Allow that homeowner, especially if they want to age in place, to live in the smaller unit and have a family with a couple of kids living in the big house. It creates not only a housing opportunity, but it creates community. And that's the real key. We are very swiftly losing major sectors of our demographic on the Cape because there's plenty of housing for people who have millions of dollars to spend, and there's very little for people who work every day and live and work here year over year. I will tell you that since I started working on the Cape, more and more of my trade contractors live over the bridge. It's not because the guys in New Bedford have a better vocational high school and produce better plumbers. It's because people can afford to live in Wareham or Plymouth or Carver or Brockton, and it's still worth it to commute for the work. But there are no housing opportunities here for that middle income sector, which is 100 to or 80 to 120, 150% of area median income, and it's those people that drive the economy. It's those people that fix your car. It's those people that come over and fix your boiler, in the middle of the night. These are the type of people you want to help. And an accessory dwelling unit program that is broad brush, that allows flexibility, is really, really a key component to this. Because fighting over multi-unit housing and shared wall housing and the time to development is very long. There's when you get the Cape Cod Commission involved, I've been involved in a project where we've spent literally hundreds of thousands of dollars on traffic studies for people to come down and say, there's really long wait lines at the lights between Labor Day between Memorial Day and Labor Day. You do not need to spend $200,000 to find that out. That's not going to change. What can change is the ability to address this issue here, and not through subsidy and not through all sorts of complicated programs that really take effort and money from the state, from people regionally to support it. Create more housing. And the accessory dwelling unit's a great way to do it. I brought with me tonight a few copies of what the Smarter Cape Build a Smarter Cape partnership has put out. Right, that's a conglomerate of local businesses who employ a major sectors of the workforce down here. This cry has been going on for 10 years. So, a few things you also want to note. This town, unlike many other towns in the Cape, has been very hard hit by the recent changes in the flood maps. So a lot of this housing that you talk about, this 10%, 5%, we're going to create housing here and there. You're going to have vast swaths of this town fall into disrepair because there is no incentive to either repair or replace a house in a flood zone. And the barrier to do so is extremely high. It's extremely high. You know why? Because the federal government says we don't want people living in flood zones anymore. So basically everything south of Route 28 in Yarmouth someday will be wet. And in some cases, to fix those houses, they would have to raise anywhere between 9 and 13 or 14 feet in the air. It's a dramatic, dramatic, dramatic change, and nobody has the money to address that issue. You're going to lose tons of housing. I will say, I will say that the accessory dwelling unit, it should be controlled. There should be some opportunities for the primary resident or the owner to live in either property. I think there should be an incentive to do it, whether it's through a tax incentive, a local tax incentive, real estate tax incentive, or otherwise. But it has to be substantial, and it has to invite people to do it. The beauty of the accessory dwelling unit in an unsubsidized marketplace is this: if I, as a homeowner, want to spend, and this is what it will cost, between $80,000 and $300,000 to legally retrofit a unit on my property, that's my decision as a homeowner. If I think that the market rents at $800, $1,000, $1,200, $1,500 a month will support my investment, then I can make that decision. The second component is that a broad brush accessory dwelling unit program will also incentivize public safety and compliance with the building code. You have hundreds and hundreds of illegal apartments in every town on the Cape. They're all done illegally. They don't meet minimum standards of habitation. They don't have proper egress. They don't have proper electrical systems, heating, air conditioning. The list goes on. Give people an opportunity to come in and say, hey, you know what? I've had my basement finished for years. I've rented it. I want to come into compliance. I'm willing to go, work with me and give me a building permit and show me what I have to do. Incentivize better, safer housing for people, and do it through a program, a vehicle that allows them to do that. In summary, I wanted to thank you guys for your efforts. This is a huge problem, and without some public venue to express really where the issues are, this will not get solved. And I will tell you again, it's wastewater and density. You have to allow those to happen, and don't be afraid to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate it. A lot of great points. I think everyone's in agreement with those. Anyone else?
You can take one and pass it to them. Yes, my name's Holly. I'd like to know why you are trying to build these for just low income and not doing something for the seniors. The seniors that live here on the Cape that have been making Yarmouth what it is for the last 50 years and paying taxes. This low income housing that you're planning on to build, and you're going to do, what, 600 units? That's a lot. Where are these people all going to have jobs to work? Or are they going to be paying taxes? And I'd like to know how it's going to be maintained. Is it our taxes that are going to be maintaining these buildings? Is it the people that live there? Are they going to be maintaining them? And I think that you should really consider doing something more for the seniors or the veterans that live here. Instead of attracting low income, I think you should have learned your lesson with Swan Pond Village and the problems that they've had there over the years before I even moved to this town. And that's what I hear a lot about, that this may turn into more of a place similar to Swan Pond Village, where they've had a lot of issues in the past, like I said, even before I lived here. But I think you should really consider, instead of just building them for the lower income, do it for the seniors, the people that have been living here most of their lives and retiring. Because if the school goes through, the taxes are going up. And these seniors, if you go into your Stop and Shop and your Shores and stuff, you look and see who's cashing you out. It's usually someone in their 70s and 80s. I have quite a few people that I do know that work at Stop and Shop that are in their 70s. And they're working there not just because they want to, something to do. They're doing it because they can't make it on their Social Security checks.
You need to stop and think about who built your town, who made it what it is. It's your seniors. And I think you should take some of these and make them into not just 55 and over. If you're collecting Social Security, you should be able to be in there. And not just 55 and over, because you get the 55 and over, like over on Winslow Gray, it's 55 and over, and you get somebody that comes in younger, a boyfriend to live with somebody, and then it's just... And Winslow Gray is... 55 and over, that complex right there, I think there's like 40 units. That should be redone over, remodeled. I've been in there. I had a friend that lived there. And I'd be ashamed to the state owning that and not taking care of it and making it better for the seniors. I'm all for the seniors. Sorry to say, but I am. And I think that you all should really consider doing more for them. Because like it says, the taxes go up for other projects like the schools and things that everybody wants. These seniors aren't going to be able to afford to live in their homes. You know, and you got to think about, are you attracting lower income? Is it going to be more crime? Is it just for, you know, just families? I just was wondering why, you know, and I don't think there's enough in Yarmouth, like I said, for the elderly, you know, seriously. And I think there should be some of this money that you're thinking of putting into this should go into the housing complex that's on Winslow Gray, because I've been there numerous times, and it really needs to be redone over. And you have one on 28 for low income. It's not even finished. And you guys are already starting to think of doing huge, more low income here. And I just was wondering why you're not taking care of the people that have lived here all these years. They would like to stay living here. And I think as the years go on, they're not going to be able to, because the taxes are going to go so high. And I just was wondering how it's going to be maintained. Who's going to be paying for it? You know, is it the state going to be paying for the maintenance on the buildings and the, you know, when something's wrong with the building, it needs a new roof? Do we pay for it, the taxpayers that live in the town? There's a lot of questions like that. And I think it should be, I don't know if you have advertised this in the paper or anything. I haven't seen anything. I happened to hear it, just overhear it, and that's why I'm here tonight. I was kind of surprised that there's so many units and nothing for the seniors. All right. I'm sure I'll be back with other questions. And I hope everybody else who has a thought gets up and at least speaks your mind, because it's important. Like I said, I don't think just attracting low income. I was wondering what it does for the town. I think we should be attracting something in the town, or building something in the town that will attract tourists to be here. You know, you go to Sandwich, they have the Glass Museum, they have Heveridge Plantation, they have the boardwalk, they have beautiful beaches. What does Yarmouth really have in town that is attracting tourists where we can get money for the town, for the firemen, for the policemen, things like that? And with these units, if you do 600 units, that more people, you're going to need more police, more firemen, more everything. There's a lot to think about. And I think a lot of people aren't getting into that depth of thinking about it. But there's, like I said, I think it should be, at least a couple of units should be new for the seniors that live here. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, and I'm sorry, what was your name? Holly. Well, thank you very much, Holly. I'll try to just quickly address some of those questions. I mean, there's a lot of information there, and Mary can kind of answer some of the more technical things. But, you know, a couple things I really want to talk about the veterans. That's a great point. And I know I've sit on a couple committees here with the town, and the three that I sit on, we're very active in trying to find housing for veterans. We've worked with a couple different private or other organizations that have come forward to us also looking to do that. We have looked at a couple different pieces of property. Some didn't work out, but that is definitely on our radar, because I know, at least for me, being a veteran, it is very, very important. As far as the elderly, we have John Simpkins. That's a great project there. Any of these other projects, anybody can qualify for them income-wise. It's not age restricted, on either side of that. As far as Long Pond and Winslow Gray, that is the Yarmouth.
Restricted.
Excuse me?
It is age restricted.
John Simpkins?
I tried to get an apartment for
Not
my
affordable.
Yeah.
Disabled daughter.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, again, each place is a little bit different. These are just, very general statements.
And this school, Simpkins, was just done recently. I have a friend that lives there. I've been there.
Yeah, beautiful.
And they are not affordable to the average senior. They're not. A lot of people I know have gone there and do not qualify. They don't make enough money. That's why I'm saying you need to focus on your seniors. People who created this town have paid their taxes for 50, 60 years living here.
I'm interested to hear that. I mean, usually at John Simpkins, I hear just the opposite. They make too much money. That's usually the problem to get into programs like a John Simpkins type situation.
Want money to come into the Cape.
Of course.
Want to attract people that have money, that come here and will spend money. That's what you want. And need to really think about something else that will attract the tourists here, so we get the revenue and the money for the town for things that they want and they really need.
Sure.
That's a.
Yeah, so just a couple more things I'll point out, and then obviously there's a lot of information
it's
here,
just the
but
beginning.
some really key points I think are important for people to understand. So Winslow Gray that's operated by the Yarmouth Housing Authority, nothing to do with us. So I've grown up in this town my entire life. I know that property very well. I would love to see that property, brought up to standards, and hopefully that does happen at some point. But like every one of these other programs, it all comes down to financing and funds. So, and just to really quickly answer one of your other questions about, we talked about the Cavaliers, for an example. This is what I like to call workforce housing. These are people that have jobs. So they have to meet certain criteria, and usually that criteria is not making too much money. That's the problem. So these people are really needing this type of housing because they don't, they can't afford to, market rate properties.
Yeah.
But very important about this, I want to make sure people understand, is these properties are maintained by private companies, not by the town. They own these properties. So we're involved in creating this housing, but your tax money, my tax money is not going towards the maintenance of these properties. So
I didn't think a lot of people knew. I didn't know.
Sure.
Is it the town doing it? Is the state doing it? I didn't know.
yeah, these are owned by private companies. There's a lot of things like tax credits that are involved in that. And there's a big formulas and things that are way above my pay grade that make these properties work. But I just want to make sure you and I understand these are not maintained by the town. So
But I didn't
think
hear that as a question with other people that just heard about it.
Sure.
They were saying,
That's very important.
How is it going to be maintained? And it was a good question.
And the reason why we like these projects is these people want to have full occupancy. So they are not going to allow these properties to come dilapidated, because then it draws a different type of client, and they're going to have a hard time renting them. Their goal is to have 100% occupancy. That's how it works for them financially. So, I can't say in 10 years what that's going to look like, but I feel very comfortable with the partners that we have worked with that maintaining these buildings is not going to be an issue. Now, 50 years from now, that might be a different question. But, again, they do not want to have these properties run down and not look presentable, because that hurts their business model. So that's where we get the reassurance as far as them maintaining them.
And like the one on 28, that's like where the tourists go, to have the low income right on 28.
Sure, workforce housing. Let's use that term.
Yeah, it has to
Yep.
be,
These are
maintained.
working people at any age on the Cape, some with children, some not, some single. There's studio units there. These are people that are working here and just can't afford market rate rents. Even though the rents there are still high, just not market rate, but that's just where we are as a community, and all the financial aspect of all of that. So I would encourage you. I feel your passion for this. We are always looking for volunteers. It sounds like you're very knowledgeable about this and very passionate about it. Think about joining. There's lots of committees for the town that are eagerly looking for people like yourself that have the passion and the energy to try to make things better. That's why all of us are sitting here. We're volunteers. There's no benefit here for any of us except to try to make our town better. That's the only reason why we're here. So give that some thought too. But thank you for your comments. They're great.
Thank you for answering it. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Can I make one?
Glad-
Please. we talk about homes for the seniors and that. I am definitely a senior. But where are the people going to come from that service me? The fellow that painted my house, that put the roof on. Their help has to live someplace. And if they have to be bussed in from off Cape, they're going to be that much more expensive. So it's self-destroying. But there's room for all of us. We can make this work.
Hi, my name is Evelyn, and I'm from the Cape, and I'm going to tell you something about people from the Cape. We don't like to leave the Cape. I'm a 15th generation Cape Codder. My dad was born in 1927, and my grandfather had a teaching job in Cambridge, and my grandmother refused to leave Cape Cod. She lived in Wellfleet, and when she went into labor, she went out and cranked up the car and drove herself to Cape Cod Hospital because she was not going to have a wash ashore. So that was that. There's something about being in the same community for a long time and having your cousins. The other day, my son and I, we were in the grocery store, and my cousin was there with his 2 kids, and you run into your family, you say, oh, how are you doing? Or it gives you the opportunity to be together and to see multiple generations that you normally would not see. So we do like to stay on Cape Cod. Some of the programs are actually against us, and I understand that people, these systems are in place, but we don't always fit in these nice little check mark boxes. And I'll give you an example. I have a sister, and she is she has a housing certificate. One person, so she qualifies for a studio. She pays $900 a month for a hotel room on the Outer Cape. She does not drive. She has major medical problems. I go up there and help her a lot and bring her grocery shopping. She would love to live with me, but her housing certificate's for one person. And I would love to get my own place too, but why couldn't we live together, kind of? But she qualifies for one room. People need to realize most everyone is about 3 paychecks away from having their housing situation changed. So if you lose your paycheck for 3 months, your quality of life changes. So I'm a stage 4 cancer survivor. So I've missed a lot of work. And families like to stay together, and that's the thing about Cape Cod families, or I think in any area, you want to stay together. You want to be where your support group is. You want to be where where you have your community, the people that you know, and keep your kids in the same schools and not be moving. And this summer, winter, oh, I'm trying to get into this school system. It's very disruptive for the kids that, can I go to Nauset, or am I going to go to Mattakees, or am I going to DY? Because trust me, it doesn't really matter what town it is. If you're from Cape Cod, you want to stay on Cape Cod. So you'll do it. And so I think that some things need to be thought of creatively, that a family doesn't always have to be what you think of as a family. A family could be my sister and my son and myself, but the 3 of us would actually drive each other crazy if we all lived together and had one living room. So it would be like a living room and a sitting room. If one person wants to watch TV all the time, then the other person could still have a common area. Otherwise, you have people go into their bedrooms and close the door, and they're shutting themselves off. When I was younger, I went and looked at some apartments in Vail, Colorado. And the way that they were building their apartments, and this was in the 80s, they were set up for 3 people to rent an apartment. and each bedroom had its own sitting room, and the kitchen, each person had a really tall cabinet that locked, and a mini fridge in that cabinet too. You also had your big refrigerator, but an issue can be, you know, food. Oh, I had milk. Where'd my milk go? I want to have a cup of coffee, and it's gone. So what they did in Vail, Colorado, is they designed the apartments for 3 single people to come together, to live together, much cheaper, one roof and everything else, but also to provide them some of their own space, even in the common areas. So you walked in the door, and I remember there was a big, well, it was a ski area, so there was a big place to put your ski boots, and there was an area that you came into, and then each person had a coat closet. And then there were the rooms branched off, and then there was a big dining area, and it's a nice system. So I've never seen that here on Cape Cod. Mm-hmm. And it's a good idea, because I think a lot of people are looking for like one bedroom, and if you look around and you look at what's available for one bedrooms, they're not super nice. I mean, if you get a nice one, you're lucky. Let's put it that way. So I just wanted to say, I mean, this is another building idea to think of, where people can be together, because people like to be together, people like to see each other, maybe have a common meal together a couple times a week, but people also need their own space too. And I think that this would provide that goal. Instead of doing 3 one-bedroom apartments, you could do one big apartment, but make it for 3 singles to live together and help each other out. So that's my idea. So thank you.
Thank you, that's great.
Someone's up there last year, those are now condos.
$1 million.
Right.
I have a question.
Please.
Could you explain what the process would be to change the accessible dwelling unit situation?
I think I'm going to defer that to, I'd like to defer that to the town planner, who's here.
Perfect.
Hi, Kathy.
I'm Kathy Williams, the town planner, and the planning board is where we would go to change the zoning bylaws for accessory dwelling units. Here in Yarmouth, we call it an accessory apartment. Right now, and for the last few months, the planning board, Tom Roach is here, he's on the planning board as well, has been looking at modifications that we can make to the accessory dwelling unit program. Right now, it's for affordable units and for family-related units only. One of the things that Mary had talked about earlier with the affordable was having that ready renter list and having to go through the lottery and having to pick a certain person. What we're looking at is reducing some of those requirements so you don't have to go through that entire process. So you might be able to rent to somebody that you know who happens to be income eligible already, and you might be more comfortable renting to someone you know than picking somebody off of a list. It's a little bit different, I think, with an accessory dwelling unit because you are living very close proximity, maybe even in the same building as somebody else, so you really would feel more comfortable if you knew that person or if it was someone that you were able to choose yourself versus something on a lottery. We're keeping it affordable by doing it through the federal fair market rates and tying it to that so that it always stays affordable. I don't think there's really any benefits necessarily to creating an accessory dwelling unit if it doesn't stay affordable, because that's the whole point. We don't want the market to take flight, so to speak, and have a really high demand and then bring up the rates of those affordable accessory dwelling units. We want to keep them affordable. We've also looking at modifying the definition of what's considered a family. I think we all know that families are a little bit different nowadays, and allowing a little bit more flexibility in who's considered a family. Maybe it's a godchild or something like that, and leaving it up to the Zoning Board of Appeals to make those determinations through a special permit process. So we are working actively on it, the planning board right now. We meet every first and third Wednesday here in this room at 5:30, and we're going to have a meeting on December 5th. I'm sorry, Norm's here as well. Norm Weir's also on the planning board. And certainly come and have some conversations about it and see where we're going. We're going to be bringing it before, hopefully, annual town meeting in May. We will be having a formal public hearing probably sometime in February. But certainly come to a meeting. It's open to the public. People can make comments. We can certainly talk about it in more detail.
Hi, my name is Sherry Kroll. I don't live in Yarmouth now, but I have, and I've lived in motel rooms and different housing things. So I've seen a lot of homelessness in Yarmouth and on Cape Cod, and been advocating for safe, affordable housing. I was lucky. I also grew up in construction, and my father built housing for seniors and elderly, disabled in Section 8. But I'm also an employee, and I work for the Dennis Yarmouth School District, and I'm on the poverty level at what I make. I am disabled. I'm a teaching assistant. I work with special needs. I have a great respect for my special needs. I have a great respect for the low-income families around here, too. I also have been wicked super active at the senior center, and I love my seniors. God bless them all. I've been wicked fortunate, but the housing is a huge crisis for all of us. I don't have solutions. I commend you on the ones that you have brought to the table. They are really awesome. I do have one idea I will share with you, but at an income, if I worked full-time, I'd be lucky to make $29,000 a year. So I'm your low-income person. My girlfriends and their children with no fathers who are helping pay any child support are your low-income people. We are not, we can't get housing. We don't even qualify. We have also been women, sadly, a lot of us have domestic violence abuse, our credit rating destroyed. We're just looking for a safe place. I have a letter in my phone from a 12-year-old on Cape Cod. And that letter asked Santa for a home, just a safe home. A dog and a goat. I don't know, I should probably get the goat before the house, but they don't even want a house. Just a safe, affordable place to live. So why I stood up was because I do work with people who are making low money, but we're doing hard work with our own kids in not just in the schools, but in the community and volunteering in other service areas. You know, and my cafeteria staff, these ladies, the Cumbies that you go to, the gas station clerk, we're all making barely minimum wage. We're not. Minimum wage was supposed to go to $15 an hour. Try living on that. Try supporting a family on that. Most of these young people are working 2 jobs. I see my seniors working in, Stop and Shop, bagging groceries. They're getting paid crap, too, I'm sorry to say. But anyway, so we're low income, and there's a lot of us. So, but I will share with you in my search to try to find solutions for myself. In SAFE, I found a community out in East Hampton, Mass. It's called Treehouse Foundation. And it's a building intergenerational communities, which is what I truly believe in. I think it's an awesome benefit to have all ages put together. There's many things. For seniors, it's lonely. It's isolation, and it's tough. As a single person now, with kids grown up, it's tough. I don't want to own a home. I love to be with other people, But this one is building intergenerational communities where children and youth are placed in foster care with families and elders thrive. And reading an article about this, one woman moved from Michigan who was a senior just to join this community. I went out. It is one of the happiest, beautiful communities. So I'll just put that as one of the other ones to maybe Yarmouth can explore. I work with a lot of kids, and I don't know about the foster and orphan system down here either. It's one of the things I'm looking into. It's tough. It's tough. There's a lot of kids that need our help. There's a lot of seniors. It'd be great to see it all work together. And veterans, God bless them too. Thanks.
Oh, thank you. I'll scan it in and send it to everybody. That's great. There were a couple of comments that were emailed in. One was for Sarah Coles. She's a Yarmouth resident, and she supports the model ADU bylaw, the accessory dwelling unit bylaw, and that was passed out to you tonight, I think, from Matt, right? And Jan Hively, she's part of the Yarmouth Age Friendly team over at the Senior Center. She couldn't make it here tonight, but she wanted to know that she's trying to work and build up a Cape Cod Youth Build program. So it's a program for high school students getting their GEDs, high school age student people who are getting their GEDs, and matching them with programs that would teach them construction skills and experiences. So you can see the connection with housing on that. Yep, and she has strong support for rehab for accessibility, support for accessory housing to facilitate caregiving and multi-generational families, and solo agers. That's the new term, solo agers. So you learned something tonight right here. Sharing housing. So that was from Jan Hively. I also... I don't know if I scanned this in and sent it to you, but I have some articles about the seasonal worker housing in Howard, if anybody wants to look at those real quick. I thought it was pretty interesting, but we have the articles here if anybody wants to look at them.
Do we still have time?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Hi, I'm Emily Szymanski. I'm a recent resident of Yarmouth. I lived in Dennis for 28 years and just bought a house over here a few months ago. So I have a lot of personal interest, and also it's my career now as a real estate agent. You know, housing is very important to me and to my clients. So on the very personal level, you know, growing up here and having a lot of friends, everybody's moved away. They all left. I don't have that many people left from my group of friends in high school that stayed here. They couldn't afford to on what they could make, or they'd go off to college and realize, oh, there's so many more opportunities here. Why would I move back? I can't get a decent job or a house I can afford, or, you know, that kind of thing. So most of the people that I knew were gone. On the other end of that, you know, as a realtor, the question that makes my heart sink is everybody comes up and they're like, oh my God, do you have any rentals? And I just go like, because I don't have a good answer for them, you know. So I'm really grateful that you're all here doing this tonight, and that everybody's here and chiming in and talking about what our options are. I have a lot of elderly clients or potential clients that are afraid to sell their house because they have nowhere to go. Mm-hmm. The wait list for elderly housing is like 5 years long. They're like, I've had 3 different clients say, I'm going to be dead by then. I'm not, you know, I'm just going to stay, I guess. And they can't maintain this giant house, or even not a giant house, but it has stairs or whatever it is. You know, I had somebody in tears today with me, and it's just heartbreaking that she wanted to sell her house, but she feels like she can't. She has nowhere to go that she can afford. You know, but she needs to have a place to live where things are taken care of for her, like shoveling and all those things that you need as you get older. So I'm really glad that this is happening and this conversation is open, and I think also you guys have some really great ideas up there. I did the survey before I got here. I was just telling somebody I've been excited about this for about a week now. So my answers are in there. I did write comments. But also, like somebody else was saying, you know, before I got into real estate, I was a caregiver to adults with disabilities, and I never cleared $30,000 a year. And I worked overtime, and I worked 2 jobs, doing other stuff too, and I didn't make enough money to live here, and I made too much money to qualify because I didn't have children. So I was just stuck in this gray area, and I was ready to leave when I decided I was just going to change my life and go into another field. You know, I love those people. I'm still in touch with everybody, and I work like a couple hours here and there just to see people, but you really can't make a living on $13 to $15 an hour and afford housing on the Cape. Not even to buy a house, you know, but just to find a rental that you can afford. A lot of times I will talk to first-time home buyers, and I'm like, you'd be better off buying if you can, like, let's talk about programs, because paying $1,800 to $2,200 in rent is insane. You know, I just bought a house, and my mortgage is on the lower end of the scale I just mentioned, and, you know, it's like, okay, it's doable, and it makes more sense sometimes than paying someone else's mortgage. So yeah, there's just a lot to it, but the senior housing thing, I agree, that's kind of a big deal right now. All the boomers, you know, my parents are in that age bracket. They're looking at downsizing, and they're not sure what they're going to do. You know, they were talking about renting for some of the year, like, you know, the options are just limited. So it would be great to see some other options and some other things out there. They have a house that had like a maybe accessible dwelling. They could never really rent it. I rented it at one point being family, but it was an issue, and they would have loved to do something with that 10 years ago, you know, maybe not so much now. So yeah, I just wanted to say thank you all for having this meeting, and I've gotten a lot of great stuff from what everybody said. I'm hoping also that we can get some veteran housing. I know when I was living in Dennis, there's some being built, and there was a lot of not in my backyard stuff going on around it, and that's tough. You know, we need to help each other out. We need to be open and willing to do those things for people that have served us in many ways, like the senior people and the veterans. And also just, you know, to keep in mind that the workforce housing is a better way of putting it, because there are a lot of people that are out there, they're working 2 and 3 jobs, and they're not, you know, just laying around doing nothing and crime-ridden and stuff, and they need a place to live. And affordable, you know, I'd love to see that number change a little bit. I know when I was working as a caregiver, like $1,100-1,200 a month was what I took home. Like, that was it. So I would not have been able to have a car, which would have meant I couldn't work. So, you know, there are those things to consider as well, if there's any way to buffer that. And to get the people that fall between the cracks, you know, the people who qualify for Section 8 and food stamps and all that. And then there's the people that are somewhere in the middle, and then there's the people that can afford to live. And the people in the middle just get kind of forgotten, and those are the people that leave. So, all right, I guess that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Please, anyone else who would like to talk, I'm just going to say this because I don't want to forget. It's very important. So 2 things. All this information is so awesome, and I'm not just young people, but I love seeing that here. And, you know, someone, myself, not that young anymore, but growing up on the Cape, and my wife's from the Cape, and I know a lot of people that have left the Cape, and I feel fortunate every day that I can live here and raise my family. But it's the wage, the income, it's hard to find a high-paying job in Cape Cod. So not to get too much into that, but my 2 points are, all this information that everyone is throwing out is so important and so valid, but please take the survey. Mary's taking notes, she always does, but all this information, if we don't have this on the survey, we can't put it all together with information we can give to other people that need it. So please remember to take the survey, whether it's written or online. And then to follow that, all of these things that we're talking about, accessory apartments, that's very important. All the zoning changes, all of these things. Not one person sitting up here makes that decision. It all goes to town meeting. Everything we talk about is voted for or against at town meeting. None of us can make these things happen. So this passion and your involvement is very important, but town meeting is more important. That's what's going to change the zoning bylaws, the accessory dwellings, affordable housing, all these things that we're trying to do. Town meeting is what makes that final decision. And, you know, that goes with the schools and all these other things. You have to remember, you have to go to town meeting to make that count. Coming to this is important. I'm not trying to downgrade it, and we're getting and gathering this information, but none of us can change the bylaws or the rules. All has to be voted on. So make sure if you feel passionate about it or you want to get involved, please attend town meeting. And anyone else who would like to talk, we love hearing the information. I didn't want to interrupt, but I didn't want to forget those 2 things.
Yes, I'd like to make a few comments.
Please.
Good evening. My name is Anne Grammer. I live here in Yarmouthport. I live in Yarmouthport because I looked for 1 whole year for housing and couldn't find it, and then my real estate agent finally came up with this house that was sold under duress. And I didn't really want it to be in Yarmouthport. The town is too expensive. The income level is too high. But I'm 80 years old. Even if I sell my house and try to find a rental that would at least be $2,000 a month, you can imagine how quickly my house will be eaten up. And what do I do then? It seems that we all live much, much longer than we expected to. And what this lady said here in the front, I wholeheartedly second. We need affordable housing for seniors. We need affordable housing for nurses and home aid people, because they are the ones we have to depend on one day. And I don't think that the housing that was built on Route 28 is so terrific. I stopped my car, I got out and walked on the facility. Would you like to live, all of you, right next to a sidewalk, and that happens to be your bedroom? The town should have at least said so many feet away from the road. It is not human to live like that. And I'm hoping that whatever housing you are planning, put it right next to my house. There's an empty lot. I went already to the engineer and said, why is the town not putting a home there for, let's say, a woman with 3 or 4 children? Yeah, well, the neighbors would object. Well, I said, I'm the neighbor, and I wouldn't object. So I know that there are single plots all over Yarmouth, and I don't understand if we have a contract as the town with builders, that we don't force them to put up affordable housing. You get a permit for 2 huge mansions, but on the same point, you have to build for the town 10 affordable housings. And I know that can work because my brother is an architect and builder in Delaware, and Delaware is saying, yes, you can build 2 McMansions, but we need 10 affordable housing, otherwise no permit. And that seems to work, because he wants to build. And I think we need to much more tell people about the vocabulary NIMBY, not in my background. How dare we say not to build in my backyard? We're talking about human beings who need decent, affordable housing. And I don't understand that the town does not lean on whoever sets these prices. People can't afford the rent. And there has to be a way that the builder you had here before, this is all wonderful. Take a private home, expand it so that you have an apartment for a renter. And what does the owner then do? He raises the rent in order to get the money back that he laid out to expand his home. So that's a totally catch-22 situation. That doesn't help a renter. He'll end up paying $2,000, which he doesn't have. So housing is the most urgent thing for this town, not the school. There's a declining enrollment in Dennis. There's a declining enrollment in Yarmouth. So what do we need? A new school. And the teachers can't afford living here. There is something very, very wrong with this picture. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Sandy Seeley, and I've been in Yarmouth since 3rd grade. Before that, and I'm not going to say when I was born, before that, I was born on Nantucket, and we moved to Chatham, then we moved to Osterville, and then we moved to Bass River. And so it's been since 3rd grade, and I'm very in touch with my community. One of the things that I wanted to talk about was a book that Emily Dickens wrote, her father being Charles Dickens. And what she wrote about in the 70s was all the homelessness on Cape Cod. So that's going back to the 70s. And there's been homelessness. It's not new. It's been going on for a long, long time. At one point, 1/3 of the homeless families in Massachusetts were on Cape Cod. That's not singles, that's homeless families were on Cape Cod. So it's encouraging to hear this, but it's not new. It's been something we've been facing for a long, long time. And I'm glad you're calling it workforce housing, because people who have low incomes doesn't mean that they're criminals or not pulling their weight. And I like that term. That's a great term I learned tonight. I didn't know that. So I'm very supportive for workforce housing. I guess I went to Boston for 12 years and commuted 4 hours a day and worked with homeless, mentally ill people in the city. Partly because we didn't want to talk about homelessness on Cape Cod. And it's really refreshing when you go and everybody's trying to do something for homeless people in the city. A lot more than here. But now we're starting to see it. People wanted to hide the homelessness we had for years. And then it became apparent with the hotels on Route 28, the Cavalier and other hotels. And now I think it's a beautiful structure. It looks so much better than the Cavalier did. Even if it's close to the sidewalk, if you think of the brownstones on Commonwealth Ave, those are close to the sidewalk too, and they cost millions of dollars. So good for you. And plus, it's an easy walk. I'd like to have a sidewalk on my street. Sometimes. But at any rate, again, thank you. It's not a new problem. I love seeing and encouraged by what's going on. And it's good to see Nate, another fellow real estate person. That's where you go when you're not commuting to Boston anymore. Thanks.
Thank you, Sandy. And I will bring up, just because I do know Sandy and her working for, I guess I'll say McPhee Associates. They are the ones that are building the veterans housing in Dennis. They are volunteering and offering, I'm not going to get into details about free. I don't think it's free, but they're offering a lot of things to make that happen. So again, there's a lot of moving pieces to every one of these things, and just so everyone knows, all the towns and everybody are really trying hard to change people's outlook on affordable housing. Where can we create it? Different things, and I can tell you, doing a lot of work with like everybody else up here, there's a lot of moving pieces and a lot of things that we're trying to do. Again, it gets down to the bylaws and rules of the town, and that's where it's so important to try to change these things. So keep that in mind.
Might it be possible to have those objects that you just mentioned in the newspaper? Publish it. Inform the public. This is what we're trying to do. These are the obstacles, and we keep you posted how we progress.
Sure. I will say, I'm not saying we can't do a better job. Everything can be better, but I know, just because I work with Mary a lot, or work under Mary, because she's my boss, thank God. But advertisement's expensive. But through our website, different things at different community places, word of mouth, all of those things are very important. So the outreach is there. Could it be better? Of course. But there's limited funds and different resources that the town is able to use. So this is why we have these meetings for all of you now to take this information and pass it on to your neighbors. Let them know to get involved and try to change what's going on, and not just Yarmouth, all of these towns, to improve the situation for affordable housing. So
I do have to say I got really good at the website this week. And I figured out how to put the flyer on the community housing page in our website. So I will keep that going. There's also...
I'm thinking, Mary, the Cape Cod Times, the Register. Rather than having all these consultancy fees. You don't need a consultant to understand the Title V is not sustainable for the next 20, 30 years. You don't need a consultant for that. You need now somebody to say, where do we find the money? Because we missed the boat 20 years ago when the federal government was willing to pick up more than 50% of the cost?
I'll think of that. I mean,
I really feel
yeah.
if you keep the population informed, and by naming it what it is, we have a homeless problem, we have a drug problem, we have an alcohol problem on the Cape, and it needs to be mentioned. There's a vocabulary for that. Instead of saying, oh no, everything is lovely on the Cape, when it isn't.
My name is Cynthia Stead, and I work at Catholic Social Services as a housing navigator. And I just wanted to kind of answer you and to put something else on record also. There are a lot of stereotypes about homeless people. There are a lot of stereotypes about people with vouchers. If we have affordable housing, people with vouchers will come here from Taunton. I don't know what Taunton did, but it's always Taunton. Because my job was created by Catholic Social Services a year ago because 2 years ago we took over the Noah Shelter in Hyannis. It's called the St. Joseph Shelter now, but it still is the only shelter. It's the only emergency shelter on Cape Cod. That's right. We wish you'd come back because we have the guy running the front desk also having to cook lunch at the same time. But my job was created to help people apply for housing. And I bother Mary all the time. I make her life miserable. As I say to my clients, I don't have any money and I don't have any magical housing access. What I do have are two very powerful weapons. One is a photocopier and the other is stamps. Something that the state believes that people in a homeless shelter have infinite access to. I make out applications, I help people, and I help people in the community as well. But there's a stereotype, too, about who is actually in the shelter, and I want to share some things with you. I have at least a half a dozen clients in the shelter who are getting up every day to go to Marshall's and Bed Bath & Beyond and other stores. They are the people that you're talking about, but they're living in the shelter now. They are the homeless people. The median age at the shelter is 58. The average is older than that. We're seeing even more people come in now because they've lost control of their finances because of Alzheimer's and other diseases, and they pay some bills 3 times and some bills not at all, and they don't want to ask for help. And they've never accessed social services, but they don't want to be on the dole either. Places like this are tremendously valuable because they can apply for them. And somebody will come in from the shelter and say, you don't have anything for 3 years? And I say to them, well, what if you'd done this 3 years ago? You'd be there now. You may as well do it now. Yes, the waits are tremendously long, but people like Mary and people like this project on 28, even if it is going to be near the sidewalk and across from the place with the balloons and the pirates, it's better than living on Winter Street. But I don't think that Cape Cod realizes who the homeless people are. They didn't come here from Taunton. They didn't even come from Brockton. They came here from Dennis. They came here from Yarmouth. They came here from Mashpee. Because one gentleman who does live here, he lost his house years ago to a reverse mortgage, but as he said to me, who the hell thought you'd live to be 80 years old? And he had a rental, and what I'm seeing mostly now are rentals that have been sold. And no place to go. I have at least a dozen, maybe 15 or 20 people living in the shelter with vouchers. And they're older. They're in their 60s and 70s. These are the people who need projects like this, as well as the workforce housing. It's not going to be an easy thing. We need to try to think about remodeling and repurposing existing buildings. A lot of that can be done with zoning. A lot of that can be done with encouraging accessory use. It would be great if you could use a voucher to rent a room, but you can't. It would be great if you could use a voucher for a winter rental, but it has to be a 12-month lease, which is what Sandy was talking about with the 365 program, will be very valuable. But when you say, oh, affordable housing, workforce housing, who are these people? They're the people who are ringing you out at the Stop and Shop, and they're the people that you grew up with once upon a time.
As always, Cynthia, you've inspired me to make those phone calls tomorrow for your clients.
We have a young man who wants to come up.
Oh, please.
Hi, I'm Kerry Payne, and I'm 15. I go to Dennis Yarmouth High School, and I've been noticing a lot that people my age want to leave the Cape as soon as possible. They would leave today if possible. And I think that's a problem because I personally like the Cape, but if no one else is going to be living on the Cape in 50 years, and it's just basically going to be one large retirement home and beach, what is there going to be to live there? And I think there needs to be more stuff that interests people year-round on Cape Cod, because I hear people every day at DY talking about where they want to live when they get older, and maybe once or twice a semester I hear someone say, I'd like to stay on Cape Cod. One of my classes, it was about 30 people in the class. The teacher said, who would like to stay on Cape Cod when they get older? And I was the only person who raised my hand. And I think that says a lot. And I don't think that there should be any programs specifically targeted towards elderly people, towards middle-aged people, or towards younger people. I think there should be projects that include everyone at an equal rate. And I think instead of having 50 different programs that each of them get a tiny little sliver of the pie of money, there should be fewer projects, but they should be able to get more money and able to make them nicer and have everyone be able to live there. So just like the three most inclusive projects, for instance, like the shared homes, maybe, the rent-to-own things, just the three most inclusive projects that target towards all age groups should be the only ones that you should be investing in the moment. And they should get the most money, as then they can be nicer and have nicer areas and not have to be in some place that no one would want to live right next to a sidewalk. I've lived in a city, and trust me, everyone has to live next to the sidewalk. There's no one who doesn't live next to the sidewalk. I've also lived on a little island in Canada where you had to take a ferry 2 hours to get to the mainland, and then drive another 2 hours to get to the nearest city. And those places were more attractive to people than Cape Cod is at the moment, because Cape Cod does not have houses that people can afford. It does not have things to do year-round that interest people, and it does not have jobs that work all year round and are good paying for everyone. For instance, my Spanish teacher, she teaches Spanish in the winter and through the fall and spring. And in the summer, she works at the restaurant 99 for a couple dollars an hour, because otherwise she wouldn't be able to make it. So that's all I have to say tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was really good.
Very good.
Anyone else? Well, again, awesome. This was a lot more information than I anticipated. I can't thank all of you enough for coming tonight. That was it's great. I can't encourage and say more, or I will say more about please come to town meeting, be involved in these, volunteer for committees. We need people that have passion for not just housing, all kinds of different things that are involved with the town. So I encourage you all to check those different options out. And if there's no other questions, Mary, do you have anything else?
Just to make a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn, anyone?
I'll make a motion to it.
Second? Second. All in favor?
Let's do it.
Passes unanimous. And please, there's lots of information on the table. Please help yourself to that.